A new report reveals Wizards of the Coast turned down a sequel to one of the greatest D&D video games of all time, choosing instead to focus on the disastrous D&D Dark Alliance game.
Just trying to figure out why you would do this, why anyone would do this.
Before we dive into how Wizards potentially turned down a Baldur's Gate 3 level hit in order to make one of the biggest video game flops in their history, why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons to help us keep these videos coming. It's free and it really helps the channel out. And then, let's talk more bad decisions from Wizards of the Coast. Baldur's Gate 3 has become one of the biggest role-playing video games of all time, and is based off the legendary Baldur's Gate franchise. But there is another D&D game that was considered one of the greatest video games of all time, period, that shared a ton of similarities with Baldur's Gate 3, and could have become just as big of a success or bigger given all those factors. Its name is Planescape Torment, and according to a member of the dev team who was working on it at the time, Wizards of the Coast turned down the chance to make a modernized sequel just months before committing their time and resources to the dumpster fire that was D&D Dark Alliance. Planescape Torment basically changed the game when it was released in 1999, offering a ton of features that we now consider staples in games like Baldur's Gate 3, including a set group of wildly quirky companions to adventure with, who each had fully fleshed out backstories to explore and would interact and chat with other party members and NPCs constantly, the creation of an actual useful stealth and dialogue system that allowed you to find ways to resolve encounters without combat, and a character alignment system that made your decisions matter, as every action could shift you towards either law or chaos, or good or evil. It also focused on the story to an incredible degree, as your quest to find out who your main character, the Nameless One, really was full of amazing mysteries to uncover, lots of twists and turns, and hundreds of incredible NPCs to interact with, and constant, deeply impactful choices to make that could alter your fate. And while it wasn't a massive commercial success at the time of release, being perhaps a decade ahead of its time and the limitations of 1999's gaming computers, it received universal acclaim and became such a cult classic that it was re-released with an enhanced version 20 years later, which sold substantially better. But according to a Blue Sky post by David Geider, a former employee of Beamdog, the dev team behind Planescape Torment, from 2016 to 2018, the dev team was working on Planescape Unraveled, the sequel to Planescape Torment, where you actually took on the role of an aspect of Ravel Puzzlewell, the night hag who was a major villain in the original game. And while Wizards of the Coast was, quote, on board with the idea, they refused to actually fund or publish the game themselves, which led to it being shopped around to other publishers before ultimately being dropped entirely in 2018. While Geider doesn't speculate on why Wizards refused to invest in the sequel to one of its most universally beloved games of all time, the timing does offer a substantial clue. 2018 is when the work began in earnest on what would become D&D Dark Alliance, with Wizards of the Coast not only financing the game, but buying the studio itself in 2019 to make the game in-house. So in essence, Wizards of the Coast looked at the sequel to what is regarded as the greatest D&D game of all time, with a team comprised of many of the devs who worked on the original, as well as veterans from huge RPG studios like BioWare, and instead decided to put all their time and money into D&D Dark Alliance, an incredibly generic third-person action game made by a studio with only a single poorly received Diablo clone game under their belt. A decision that would lead to one of the biggest video game flops in recent memory. So basically, if not for what appears to be more horrendous decision making from Wizards of the Coast, we could have gotten a Baldur's Gate 3 style revival of one of the greatest RPGs ever made sometime in 2020 or 2021. But now the world will apparently never get that Planescape Torment sequel, as it goes down in history as just another bullet point in the list of poor decisions Wizards of the Coast has made in the last decade. So what do you think? Would you have loved a modernized sequel to Planescape Torment to play alongside Baldur's Gate 3? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.